So now we can go with the visuals. Although I am going to deal with the sculptures, but at the same time, Indian sculptures right from the Gupta period, say 4th, 5th century AD onwards, were the integral part of the temples, because they were represented mainly on different parts of the temples. Here we see the shikhar or the spire aspect of the temple, which shows a very vital concept of non-duality. From one, top is one, to many, great. When we go down, we find multiplying the things. Multiplying in the sense that it includes the charachar, animate and inanimate world, the divine world, the human world, everything. Next. Another example of the temple, the details are given, but you can yourself see the date is given. The same thing is being represented from one to many different forms. You can see the sculptures on the exterior walls. Exterior walls, which is called facade, F-A-C-A-D, or jangha technically. Next. The temples so beautifully made, but different styles could be seen in different regions. It is a time and space. It is from Orissa, one of the greatest creation of Indian art, and it is the Lingaraj temple dedicated to Shiva. You can see the beauty. Next. Now, world famous center of Indian art and sculpture, Khajuraho, in Madhya Pradesh, where we find a group of 25 temples of Chandel period, ranging from about late 9th to 12th century AD, and one of the masterpieces or the greatest creation at Khajuraho is the most gigantic Kandariya Mahadev temple of 11th century AD. You can see the beauty, different parts, which I am not going to, because this is something to be dealt with in architecture, but these sculptures, here you can see. Next. Another temple from Khajuraho, Lakshman. It was a Vishnu temple of Vishnu, but subsequently came to be known as Lakshman temple. Anyway, next. Now comes the sculpture. These sculptures were the part of some temple doorway, which is now being put on the doorway of the museum of Khajuraho, and you can see different figures. In the center, one can see the figure of that composite image, Ardhanarishwar. The left half is of Parvati, the right half is of Shiva, and left half is of Parvati. One can easily see, and then Brahma and Vishnu. One very important thing was Ganga and Yamuna, the river goddesses, which we usually find at the lower door jambs. These are called door jambs, at the lower point of the doorway of the temple, in whole of the North India. Now, a lady beautifully standing, holding a water pitcher, and provided with crocodile and tortoise, Makar and Kurv as the Vahan. This is all, so far as the form is concerned. But why they were put on the doorway of the temple? Here comes the concept which explains the rationality of their being at the doorways. Ganga is the symbol of highest purity, and Yamuna is the symbol of highest devotion, that is bhakti. And a devotee, a person who is going to enter into the temple and finally reaching in the sanctum to pay his oblation, to be selfless, is required to be selfless. So two prerequisites he is reminded of. Whether one is pure not only by way of taking bath and changing the clothes externally, but pure at heart and mind, and whether his heart is filled with the devotion bhakti. Has he been able to become selfless? So how these sculptures give a very great concepts, great ideas as to different concepts, as to different aspects of Indian culture. And if we try to understand in the backdrop of that, then only we can appreciate it. Next, please. Another great temple of Western India is the Surya Kund and Sun Temple ahead one can see. Next. One of the greatest creation of Indian art from South India, that is the Shiva temple called Brihadeshwar temple at Tanjore, Tamil Nadu. Next. I was talking about ecology. This is the lower portion of a temple, because integration of sculpture with the architecture one can see. Lower portion of the temple is Halebid. It is in Mysore, Hassan district, Hoysaleswar temple. The beauty is one can see the rows of elephants, the lions, the floral pattern, the horses, then again floral pattern, then animals, then geese, then floral, and then comes the divine word. So the whole ecology, the world of animal flora and fauna are there, which goes along with the human world, contemporary human life, and then at the top is the divine word. So this is how the suggestiveness of Indian sculpture is very important, and then only, apart from the beauty or aesthetic appreciation, we can understand the reality of the life of those times in sculpture. Next. Compositeness. One example one can see, the right half is of Shiva and left half is of Shakti. They are inseparable. So if there is a conflict, sectarian conflict of Shiva and Shakti, Shiva, the devotees of Shiva and Shakti, it could be avoided. So it was to serve a purpose of averting the religious sectarian conflict also. Well, you are fighting for Shiva and Shakti, that one is supreme, another is not, and why the form shows that no, they are one and the same. So a great message to make or sustain the social harmony was given. Next. Another example which comes from South India of Ardhanarishwar. And the beauty is also there. You can see how beautifully the left portion of the goddess is looking into the mirror, because Gauri is said to be the manifestation of the beauty, and beauty is to be testified only through the mirror. So these are the symbolism. Next. Now here comes the union or compositeness of Shiva and Shakti. The Shiva trident, this, and the left is here Shiva and Vishnu. Vishnu is there. So Shaiva and Vaishnav, they are one, is being suggested by such images. Apart from the beauty, so beautifully, anatomical features, the ornaments, so beautiful. But the social message, which is equally or rather more important, is also to be understood. Next. Here again the same, but in terms of time it is a subsequent image, therefore the details have increased. Here one can see the Ganesh and Kartikeya on the side of Shiva. On the side of Vishnu one can see the incarnatory forms of Vishnu, Avatar Swarup Vishnu. Okay. Next. Here comes the Brahmanical Trinity as one. Put on one platform, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. the god of creation, preservation and dissolution. The same where Vishnu and Lakshmi are put in one image. And this was a pan-Indian concept. These images show that they are coming from different parts of the country and they belong to different time brackets. Next. This comes from Odisha, Konark. It is in the National Museum at the moment, and one can see how it is the king who is standing with folded hands to worship not one but three deities, Shivaling, Jagannath and Mahishmardini Durga. So by this, and Narsingha Varman was the ardent devotee of Surya because he built that great Surya temple. So a devotee of Surya is worshipping collectively the three deities. The three deities who were most important so far as the Odisha was concerned. Next. This is our national emblem. You must be knowing it. You must have seen it. But just seeing something does not means that it is end to that. We must understand that. Yes, it is beautiful. The proportion, the symmetry, the ferocious lines so beautifully carved, natural. But why are they four? What do they connote? Four means the intention of Ashok, the great ruler who was Buddhist personally, to propagate Buddhism on all the four sides. And the ferociousness of the lion is suggestive of his royal authority as well. That there is a symbolic suggestion of the royal fear also, that one has to do this. And at the top of this was, perhaps most of you might not be knowing, was a big wheel at the top of the lion, having 32 spokes. And 32 spokes corresponding with the 32 features of great men Mahapurush. And who was that Mahapurush? That Mahapurush was none else but Buddha himself, who was represented in a symbolic form as a wheel as Mahapurush. And that was to be propagated on all the sides. So this symbolism, unless it is understood, these animals representing the four different life events of Buddha, one cannot really appreciate. The polish is there, that beauty. The polish is a point of surprise even today, that how could it survive so long? So long means 2,300 years, more than. Still it is shining. The glaze is still there. Next. It is a Buddhist stupa. Buddha is represented in aniconic forms, symbolic forms, by way of stupa, by way of a tree that is called Bodhi Vriksha. Bodhi means knowledge. A tree under which Buddha attained the knowledge. But in the midst of that, the animals, flora, fauna, throughout you would find. The Gaj Lakshmi is here. The symbol at the top, 3. The concept of 3, it is called Triratna, 3 jewels. The commonality of Indian sculpture is also very important. It is common in Buddhism, Jainism and Brahminical faith. If one staff is added, it becomes the trident of Shiva. So concept of 3, this 3 is suggestive of Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam. And in case of Jainism, it becomes the Triratna of Jainism, which is Samyak Gyan, Samyak Darshan, Samyak Charita. Right knowledge, right faith, right control. So here comes the truth, a particular symbol which was common in all the religious and cultural streams. 3 different suggestions here. Next. Dealing with the life of Buddha in a very naturalistic way. And what was the beauty of the Shunga art? from Sanchi Bharahut, that even in the crowd where you would find 10, 15 or even more figures together, even in the representation of collective figures, the individuality of a figure is being maintained. You can yourself see, if 5 are there, each figure appears not as a crowd but as an individual. So that individualistic feature is being sustained in Shungar, and that is the beauty. Next. Buddha. The earliest figure of Buddha was carved at Mathura as well as Gandhar. In Gandhar with foreign influence, the Greek influence, and here is an image from Gandhar with Greek influence. Heavy ropes with heavy lines is suggestive of that influence. The face is also different, which is a face of the Greek art, Greek sculpture. Because the artists who were making that image in that particular area, we are having the direct impact or in a continuous way of the Greek art, and that was to be shown with Buddha. Next. Here you can see, nowhere we find any Indian deity except Shiva as wearing sandal. The footwear, the mustaches, these are all Greek influence, the face, the drapery. So in sculpture, even the features are according to the region or according to the time. So here it comes the space or the region. Now, again, in Indian indigenous sculptures, you can see it is Buddha from Allahabad, Manpur, and now the fold is gone and the drapery becomes transparent. The drapery in case of Buddha is Sanghati technically, because we must also know, because English translation is always not suited to the exact expression. So we must also use the technical and the right textual or Indian traditional words. We must know and we must try to use. This is for you all. And that it is Sanghati, and Sanghati drapery is transparent. Transparent because not to make it nude, but to let the beauty of the anatomical features, its proportion, transparent. Next. From Mathura, that was the age of the classical period. The best of the Indian sculptures were produced during the Gupta period from 4th to 6th century AD, particularly at Mathura, Sarnath, Rajgir, Udaygiri, and a few other places. And here you can see the fold is there, but so thin, which enhances the beauty of the figure, Sanghati. Here you can see the fold. The face, the serenity on the face, serenity which is befitting of a yogi who is in trance, half shut eyes, looking inward. And here you can see the physical or anatomical features, so proportionate of course, but what enhances the beauty of this figure is the nature. Nature in background, which is called Prabha Mandal. This is not visually just covering the head of a great man, which is called Prabha Mandal, suggestive of the radiation of or emittance of the Mahapurush, but it also shows that how in the backdrop of the nature only any person could look great and more beautiful. Next. This is Sarnath, transparent drapery, and very important, it's not static. Image is not static, fixed, but this is suggestive of a little bit of movement. And this movement is very much suited to what we get in the text. Text says that Buddha was never static. Even when he was talking, even when he was giving sermon, he was always moving. So that basic concept is being suggested in the Indian sculptures. So that is how the Indian artists were so careful about the tradition and translating the different streams of traditions, verbal traditions, into the visual language. Next. One of the masterpieces of India. Masterpieces. It comes from Sarnath, the mature Gupta period sculpture. Suppose you do not know who is he. I know because I know what features does it indicate, on the basis of which I can say that he is Buddha. But if somebody not knowing who is he will say, well, the image looks to be of some preceptor, some yogi in meditation. And that is the beauty of the art, that it speaks. These Indian sculpture, they are inanimate so far as the material is concerned, stone, metal, terracotta. But they speak to us, they communicate us, and they speak in the loudest voice. I have read somewhere that there are times when the silence has the loudest voice. So here is the example. Indian sculpture in silence has the loudest voice of the highest point of meditation. You can see, and here again the nature comes to beautify, to grace the entire representation. Next. Another different forms of Buddha. Next. One of the earliest known image belonging to some religious cult, and it belongs to Jainism. One may say it is nude, which one may remind you that of the Greek sculptures, but their nudity was because of some other concept, and this nudity implies the complete renunciation, Tyag, who has left everything. Next. Jain Tirthankar. How will you identify? This is important, because Buddha also sits in this posture this is the posture of meditation, cross-legged. And the Jain pontiff or preceptor also sits. But here one finds an auspicious mark in the center of the chest, which is called Shri Vats. And on the basis of that mark, Shri Vats, you can identify that the image is of a Jain Tirthankar. And also, there is an inscription. If one is able to decipher it, read it out, it will give the name of the Tirthankar also, and the date sometimes. The composite images were made not only in Brahminical art, but you see, this is the Jain image. Shri Vats is here, Dhyan Mudra. But what is important is the two Yaksh and Yakshi, so beautiful. Ambika and Kuber. Kuber holding a money bag, Ambika like a great mother holding a child and a bunch of mango. And here is the cognizance, that is bull, on the basis of which a particular jinn is being identified. The bull is the cognizance of the first jinn, Rishabhnath, while these two, along with Balaram and Krishna, Vaishnav. So this Vaishnav association with a Jain Tirthankar, which was, according to text, done with another Tirthankar named Nath. So it means it is a composite image representing two Jinas or Tirthankaras. One is Rishabhnath, other is Nimnath. So the composite images were made in Jain context also, which was very much in tune with the Indian culture. Next. The earliest image of Saraswati. How will you identify? Well, one can read out the name Saraswati is given in this ancient script which is called Brahmi. It gives the date equivalent to 132 Sarka era. It gives the name of Saraswati. But if one is not able to decipher it, because this is another very, very specialized branch of education or learning, one can see the manuscript. This is the manuscript Saraswati holds. Hence Saraswati. Next. Jain Tirthankar, one can see. Next. Gupta period Jain Tirthankar. Next. Jain Tirthankar, but who is he? Because of the conch Vaishnav symbol associated with Naiminath. Next. Jain Tirthankar associated with snake. The commonality in Indian sculpture you would find. The snakes were associated with Shiva, with Krishna, with Jain Tirthankar Parshvanath and even Buddha. Because tree were associated with all, because these two represent the folk element. The force is the folk. So folk has to be accepted. If one religion, if one art has to go well in the masses, well into the masses. So it was necessary. Commonality, that's Ganesh is there, Kuber is there, Mother is there. The concept and worship of Mother was common because in whole of the world man started worshipping Mother first because of her power of procreation, and then the same Mother became Amba or Ambika in Brahminical context, Ambika in Jain, and Hariti in Buddhism. So here comes the commonality. Then wealth is necessary, is the basic need for the society. So Kuber was accepted in all the three religions. So this is how and the features will also be common. So commonality of Indian sculpture coming out of the commonality of the concept, arising out of the necessity. Next. The Jain. Next. Jain fourfold, four Tirthankaras on four sides. Next. Gradually with the time what we would find that the naturalistic features have been replaced by the stylization, the flexion of body, more and more edges, and more and complicated features in the surrounding. In earlier feature you must have seen the background was left out. This space was, and here the whole of this space was filled with the figures. Next. Jain Tirthankar is there, but two more things which are pertinent to the contemporary life, that the Shastrartha disputation was going on between two Jain. They are called Upadhyayas, not the Acharya. Acharya are the highest. Next. A female Jain Tirthankar. Next. Again Parshvanath with snake canopy. Place, date is given. Next. So beautiful. You can see. The body contour, the proportion, even here is the spirituality and here is the worldly beauty. Put together, you can see the attenuated body, so beautifully done. And she attends upon the Jain Tirthankar holding a parasol kept above the head. Next. A number of Indian sculptures, very good sculptures, beautiful sculptures are in foreign museums. This is one of such examples of Parshvanath, and in the background one finds the figures of the Navagrahas from Sun, Surya, Som, Mangal, Budh, Brahspati. So Navagrahas are put around the Jayanti. And Navagrahas are found in Buddhism, in Jainism, in Brahminical art. Commonality of Indian sculpture. Next. You can see the beauty, the spirituality through the figure of a jinn who stands this only in two postures. Dhyan, seated, and this posture is called Kayotsarga, standing erect with both the hands hanging down. So that spirituality is there, but through the interwoven snake coils all around, making a background or a hollow-like decoration, the entire figure becomes more and more beautiful. So this is how the things were going on in Indian sculpture. Next. So spirituality vis-a-vis worldly beauty. Mahavir from South India. Next. Mahavir from Khajuraho. Next. This is again a Jain Tirthankar. It is in metal. Metal sculptures. They mastered not only the stone carving but also casting the metal images so beautifully. You can see the beauty, the arms. So naturalistically it is represented. Kayotsarga. Next. Tirthankar from Western India. Next. Life of the Tirthankaras represented in this ceiling so vividly. How accurate, how precise their knowledge would have been. One could imagine that all these episodes are based on the texts, different episodes. One has to read it out and it will take hours and hours for me. Next. Now, the goddesses, this Jain goddess, who is called Yakshi in Jain context, and since she holds discs in all her 10 hands, she is Chakreshwari. Next. The goddess representing the mother aspect is Ambika in Jainism. One could see with the child. Another child is standing here. Next. Kuber, the god of elephant and money bag. Both are representative or both are symbolic of the wealth and royalty. Elephant ऐश्वर्य को symbolize करता है and as well as the money bag, the purse. Next. The Kuber in Jainism, Jain art. And as we all know that even how it becomes contextual. That the popularity of the worship of Kuber in Jainism becomes relevant that even today we find that most of the 80% Jainas are the traders, belong to the mercantile class. Next. This is one of the most brilliant creation of Indian art, the tallest monolithic religious image of the world, 57 feet high. It is in single stone. It is in Karnataka, Shravanbelgol. And what is the beauty is that in its complete silence, spirituality, here comes the nature in to remain in coexistence with the human body. And nobody is disturbed. Neither this seer is disturbed, and nor it is causing any harm. Not only this only, the snakes are coming out of the entrails all along. So this is one of the best examples of Indian sculpture which shows the coexistence of man and nature. Next. Another example from Devgarh, it is in Uttar Pradesh, Jhansi. Now it is in Lalitpur. It goes even beyond that. One can see the snakes, the lizards, the scorpions also, apart from the creepers. See the beauty? And one is in trance, and the world of flora and fauna are going along with that sector. Next. And here, because in Indian context, the austerity and renunciation were given the highest priority. One was worshipped not because of his royal possessions, but was worshipped only because of the point of his renunciation and austerity. And since he has renounced everything, he has been put along with the Jain Tirthankaras. Tirthankaras are the highest in Jain worship. Nobody is supposed to be equal to him in Jain worship. But one, because of his highest austerity and renunciation, becomes or was put along with the Jains. Next. It is the elder brother of that Bahubali you have seen earlier, who was the supreme ruler, Chakravarti. But he was not worshipped as Chakravarti. He was worshipped, he became an object of worship. How the images suggest the very soul of Indian culture. He was worshipped only when he renounced everything. And here comes the renunciation. He has renounced the shield, the thunderbolt, the horse, the elephant, all the insignia of royalty and the 9 jewels. Then he becomes. Next. Saraswati. Saraswati put along with the Jain Tirthankaras. In Jainism, she was popular. In Buddhism, she was popular. And in Brahminical faith, we do know that Saraswati. Next. One of the most beautiful images of Saraswati comes from Jain tradition. It is from Pallu in Rajasthan. At the moment it is in National Museum. You can see the beauty. It is in marble. Every bit of decoration, so minutely done. It shows the dexterity as well as the artistic excellence and the face. And here comes the flexion. The work of flexion gradually increased in Indian sculpture with the advance in time. More and more figures around the main figure increased with the advance in time. Next. Saraswati from South India. Next. You must have seen even in today's worship some sort of such pothis or manuscripts wherein the pages are turned like this. So Saraswati holds that ancient type of the Jain Jivanta Swami. Next. Jain Ayagpat, showing how the symbol and the human form were worshipped together and represented together in art. Next. In Jainism you find an episode of Kaliya Mardan, Krishna subduing the snake Kaliya. It comes from a Jain side, world famous Dalwada. Next. So beautiful. Here architecture and sculpture becomes one, unified, integrated. It is the architecture. It is the ceiling of the Rang Mandap, so beautifully done. And it is the figures. Next. The female goddesses of Jainism. Next. Kartikeya, Brahminical deity Kartikeya, so beautiful. How will you appreciate it? That Kartikeya is Kumar. Kumar in adolescence. The face you can see yourself. Another point to be looked at, that his hairs are done in several tufts, which is called Kaak Paksha Shaili. The hair done in the pattern of the cock, a crow. And another is this. Even today we find that particularly in rural area, that to save the young children from the evil spirits and all that, this Vyagra Nag, the nails of the tiger are put. So this is beauty. And another artistic excellence is that instead of showing the hollow behind Kartikeya, the son of Shiva, how the artist has used his imagination, that the entire spread of the fur of peacock has been shown like making the hollow. Next, Gupta period it was, and Gupta period was the marvelous so far as the expression is concerned. Here you can see Krishna lifting the mountain. This is good, beautiful. Here again he is Kumar, the same thing. But what is to be particularly seen is that he is the Almighty God, incarnation of. How it has been suggested? Because image is not going to speak anything. You will have to understand, because that has been imbibed into it. So you will have to break its silence, and it is the way he stands is at ease. Even in the act of lifting, doing such great thing, lifting the mountain, he stands at ease. And not only that, but he is lifting the mountain with left. So these are the beauties through which we can better appreciate. Next, one of the masterpieces of Vishnu reclining on the bed of snake, which is called Sheshanag, and Lakshmi is just. Next, Vishnu coming to rescue at the call of his devotee elephant, to rescue him from the graph, and who is just apologizing that I didn't know that he's your bhakt. Gajendra Moksha, emancipating the Gaj. Next, beautiful representation of the fight of Durga Mahishmardini and Mahishasura. What is the beauty? That image speaks for itself, that who is going to win. You can yourself say that this retreat posture is suggestive of that he could gauge, he could see his imminent defeat. Retreating posture. While the way the goddess is sitting, the confidence that she is going to win. And one is fighting from the sky because of this here, and one is at the ground. So the entire episode, stone inanimate, figure fixed, but still the life, the suggestion, the movement, the episode, wonderfully one could see in Indian sculptures. Next. The goddess of wealth, Lakshmi. We all worship in all the traditions, and even today in domestic worship, Lakshmi is very, very common, because we all aspire for Lakshmi or the wealth. It is one of her forms which is called Abhishek Lakshmi. In the process of anointation or the bath of Lakshmi, she sits. And what is beautiful, that in stone the continuity of event has been suggested, that the elephant is just pouring water over the head of Lakshmi, while another one is just trying to pick up another pitcher. So it will be a continuous process. This. So here in stone, the continuity of the event, how beautifully, and the beauty you can see in the body contours, the figural representation, the face. It is one of the masterpieces of Pallav sculpture from South India. Next. This is again one of the marvelous and rather surprising creation, open air rock cut sculpture at Mahabalipuram, which represents the descent of Ganga from heaven. The entire episode, how Ganga, you can see how the artist could visualize the whole thing. I'm just moving very fast. Surya Namaskar, after bath pranam, just trying to squeeze the hair. Someone is coming out with a pitcher. And here is Shiv, Bhagirath. So entire episode, and the occasion is so pious that the world of divinity has appeared to celebrate this occasion, the occasion of coming of Ganga on the earth. Elephant figures so natural, you can see. They have so beautifully tried to understand and represented the best posture of the animals. You can see elephants. Elephants move in group. Their baby elephants move like this. The best posture of a deer could be like this. So they have not only tried to understand the world of divinity, the human forms, but the forms and nature of the animal world. Next. This is the wedding of Shiva and Parvati. Parvati Parinay. Shiva, so beautiful. Parvati, like a bride with a somewhat shyness, and Shiva is holding the palm of, and either Agni is there. This is the posture of moving around the fire, about to complete. So how, and it shows not only the wedding of Shiva and Parvati, not only the beautiful representation of the forms of Shiva and Parvati, you can see the size, and as compared to the size of Shiva, the size of, coming only up to this point. So every bit of detail they have been so careful, and also it shows the continuity of tradition of wedding in Indian society. Next. The same sculpture, but of subsequent period, therefore more intricate ornament, but less animated natural expression. Next. Cosmic form of Vishnu. Next. Ravan uplifting the mountain Kailash. Three aspects. Arrogance is there, the pride is here. He could not do it. Shiva, Mahadev, the supreme God, he knew everything. He was not at all disturbed, perturbed. So he is complete at ease. While because of a little bit of shake of mountain, what happened? That Parvati, out of fear, just came closer to Shiva. And still Parvati's, you will call it friend, is just is fleeing out of fear. So different moods and modes and different aspects of one, because it becomes very difficult. In narration, literary, worldly narration, we can attribute 50, 60, 70 pages for this episode. But in sculpture, we have limited space, and in one single sculpture we have to represent it. So we will have to pick up different episodes, different points and movements to make it more and more accurate. And in that context, Indian artists, were superb, no doubt. Next. One of the masterpieces, you all know, perhaps many of you must have been seen, Mahesh Murti of Elephanta. This is the great form of Shiva, wherein it is none else but Shiva himself having three faces. But it was said that it was having one more face on the back, and one face is invisible, that is Ishan or space. Next. Again, different manifestations of Shiva. Next. Gaj Lakshmi or Abhishek Lakshmi, you have seen another example. She is sitting in the pond of lotus. So beautiful. Next. Mahishmardini, Durga. The force, the dynamism you can see. Here also the force and the dynamism you can see of Shiva. And even in the act of dance, the balance, the rhythm. Balance and rhythm. And balance and rhythm with the cosmos. So it has got so philosophical suggestions to make besides its beauty, so far as the form is concerned, so far as the other details are concerned. Next. Another form of Vishnu, incarnatory form, Trivikram. Next. On walls, how do we find these sculptures? And how it becomes very contextual. If it is Surya, it is Surya. Then on two sides, his two sons were represented. Here is Revant, here is Manu. So here comes the integration or the contextuality of a temple with this sculpture. Next. It is a form of Shiva wherein he is honoring none else but his own devotee. Chandesha Anugrah. Chandesh, Anugrah means compassion, extended to his devotee Chandesh. But what is the beauty of a sculpture is that you just see that he is not doing it in a casual way. Shiva himself is so involved, just holding it and then making it the turban of the flower. So that is very important. That even in the act of honoring a devotee, Shiva is so serious about it. And what is the state of devotee? He is lost, just lost, unbelievable. What is going on? Next. So this is how to appreciate Vishnu. Next. Dancing Ganesh. Next. Shiv Parvati. Next. Dancing Saraswati. So beautiful. On the walls, but the flora above. Next. Surya. Next. Next. The humorous scenes were come. Even today we find that at the time of the Holi and on several occasions, such things do occur. To catch hold of something which is put at the height, and this is the way how the people do. Next. Again the humorous scene. Next. Royal figure. This is the portrait. It is the portrait. A portrait of the ruler Kanishk. And the portrait is suggestive of the grace, the force, the royalty and the dignity. And that is the beauty. That it looks, even if we do not know the inscription gives the name of the ruler, then also we can say it looks to be the figure of some ruler, some royal person. Flying, hovering figures, couples. I say hovering. Then how will you accept it that it is hovering? Because he was not going to write hovering, but it was only through the sculptural representation that hovering couples are to be shown. The posture. Another thing, in the act of hovering, the dupatta you can see. And another is the cloud. So three indications. So sculptures have so many suggestive elements to communicate you the real meaning, the real sense. Next. The world of beauty. It is said that the Indian sculptures were only religious ones, and they were after the spirituality and all that. No, you can see the world of beauty. The latest kind of drapery like bikini you can see, Navi Darshana. They never were averse to the world of beauty, and you can yourself see. So glamorous female figure, the flexion, the way she stands, the most stylized. What we see even today in different type of show in TV and all that. One of the best. 21st century sculpture this could be. Next. Another beautiful sculpture writing a letter to the beauty. Nature is there. And even in the act of writing, the style is there. Through the body flexion, the sensuousness and the beauty of the feminine beauty is being suggested the way she stands. And also, another point is the woman literacy in ancient India. Next. Holding a baby, Putra Vallabha. Technical name are there. Earlier was the Patra Lekhana. This is Putra Vallabha, playing with the baby. So even this Apsara or damsel playing with the baby has the motherly aspect to be suggested. Next. Darpana, looking into the mirror to decorate herself. Because I have told you, the mirror is the only symbol which becomes witness to the beauty. We, either the male or a female, after the initial preparation, they just look into the mirror how beautiful they look. So next, this is called Vivastra Jagana, undraping herself or arranging the drapery. The beauty of it comes from Karnataka. The nature is here. I will just explain, take 1 minute and explain the scorpion is here. Kalidas has said Tras is fear. Out of fear, finding scorpion, it was on drapery. She did it like this. So it came here, and then she is to arrange her drapery or sari again. And this was the private moment. How artist encroached upon the private movement of a beautiful lady to give it or make it the world of beauty. So many concept things were going on. Next. Perhaps this was the last dancer. Beautiful dancer with the nature. She is ghungar. The attendant is standing with a ghungar in preparation, and here you can see the social status also. The status of a dancer and the status of the female attendants attending upon her at that point of time. So many suggestions coming through these sculptures, which were not merely the point of beauty, different aspects of beauty that was there, but social, religious, philosophical, so many other aspects could be seen. Next. Perhaps this was the last. Darpana, looking into the mirror. Next, plus. Daily life, dance and music from Khajuraho. Next. Teaching is going on. Education, see. Next. Erotic, calm. Because in Indian sculpture, we find the representation of the 4 Purusharthas, the 4 main objectives: Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha. So calm was essential. So calm, since it was essential, up to the point of disciplined calm, it was approved, it was represented so boldly in Indian art. Next. In the midst of the divinities, such figures are shown. Next. And shown on such places, the temples, where the people of all the age group used to assemble together. Next. Finished. With this, I think I have tried to give you a glimpse. I know that I have encroached upon the time, but glimpse of different aspects of Indian life, including religion, philosophy, aesthetic expression, social contexts, which were so boldly and distinctly represented in Indian sculptures right from the very early time, you may say Mauryan period at least, down to the 13th, 14th century AD. I'm sure you must have been able to get into the very spirit, and that would lead you to appreciate the worth of Indian sculpture. Definitely. Thank you.